Below, ladies and gentlemen, why certain people should be avoided. Human relationships are the cornerstone of a fulfilling life, but not all relationships are beneficial. Some individuals, whether intentionally or unintentionally, can drain your energy, undermine your confidence, and derail your goals. While no one is perfect and we all have flaws, there are certain personality types or behavioral patterns that are consistently toxic and detrimental to your mental, emotional, and even physical health. Avoiding such people is not about judgment or superiority, but about self-preservation and creating a life that aligns with your values and aspirations. The 5 types of people to avoid include 1. The chronic complainer, 2. The manipulator, 3. The energy vampire, 4. The unreliable flake, and 5. The arrogant know-it-all. Each of these types exhibits behaviors that can erode your well-being, hinder your growth, and create unnecessary stress. Below, I will explore each type in detail, discussing their characteristics, the impact they have on your life, real-life examples, psychological insights, and strategies for distancing yourself from them. 1. The chronic complainer. Characteristics of the chronic complainer. The chronic complainer is someone who is perpetually dissatisfied with life and vocalizes their grievances incessantly. No matter the situation, they always find something to complain about, whether it's the weather, their job, their relationships, or even trivial inconveniences like a slow Wi-Fi connection. This type of person rarely offers solutions or looks for the positive in any situation. Instead, their focus is on highlighting what's wrong, often exaggerating minor issues into major catastrophes. They thrive on negativity and often seek validation or sympathy from others, expecting you to join in their pity party. Chronic complainers are not just occasional grumblers. Everyone vents from time to time, but individuals who make negativity a core part of their identity. They may reject optimism or solutions, dismissing them as unrealistic or irrelevant. For example, if you suggest a way to improve their situation, they might respond with, "That won't work," or "You don't understand how bad things are." Over time, their constant negativity can become contagious, affecting your mood, outlook, and even your problem-solving abilities. Impact on your life. Being around a chronic complainer can be emotionally exhausting. Their negativity can pull you into a spiral of pessimism, making it harder for you to maintain a positive mindset or focus on your goals. Research in psychology, particularly studies on emotional contagion, shows that humans are highly susceptible to adopting the emotions of those around them. If you spend significant time with a chronic complainer, you may find yourself becoming more cynical, irritable, or even depressed. This is particularly dangerous if you are someone who is naturally empathetic, as you may feel compelled to fix their problems only to be met with resistance and more complaints. In professional settings, chronic complainers can lower team morale and productivity. For instance, imagine working on a project with a colleague who constantly complains about the workload, the boss, or the lack of resources without ever offering constructive feedback or solutions. This behavior not only creates a toxic work environment, but also shifts focus away from progress and innovation. In personal relationships, a chronic complainer can strain friendships, romantic partnerships, and family dynamics as their negativity overshadows moments of joy or connection. Real-life example. Consider Sarah, a woman in her 30s who has a friend named Mark, a classic chronic complainer. Every time Sarah meets Mark for coffee, he spends the entire time complaining about his demanding boss, his noisy neighbors, his lack of time, and even the coffee being too bitter. Initially, Sarah tries to be supportive, offering suggestions like talking to his boss or looking for a new apartment. But Mark dismisses every idea, saying, "That won't help," or "It's not that simple." Over time, Sarah notices that she feels drained after their meetups, and she starts dreading their interactions. She also finds herself complaining more in her own life, mirroring Mark's behavior. Eventually, Sarah realizes that Mark's constant negativity is affecting her mental health and decides to limit their contact. Psychological insights. From a psychological perspective, chronic complaining is often linked to a victim mentality where individuals feel powerless to change their circumstances and instead focus on external factors as the source of their unhappiness. This mindset is reinforced by cognitive biases, such as the negativity bias, which causes people to pay more attention to negative experiences than positive ones. For some, chronic complainers, complaining may also serve as a coping mechanism, allowing them to avoid taking responsibility for their problems or making difficult changes. In extreme cases, chronic complaining can be a symptom of underlying mental health issues such as depression or anxiety, though this does not obligate you to endure their behavior at the expense of your own well-being. Strategies for avoidance. Avoiding a chronic complainer requires setting boundaries while maintaining compassion, as their behavior may stem from deeper struggles. Here are some practical strategies. Limit exposure. Reduce the time you spend with the chronic complainer. For example, if they are a coworker, keep interactions brief and focused on work matters. If they are a friend, consider meeting less frequently or in group settings where their negativity is less likely to dominate the conversation. Reframe the conversation. When they start complaining, gently steer the conversation towards solutions or positive topics. For instance, you might say, "That sounds tough. What do you think you could do to improve the situation?" Or let's talk about something uplifting. What's been going well for you lately? Set emotional boundaries. Remind yourself that you are not responsible for fixing their problems or absorbing their negativity. Practice emotional detachment by visualizing their complaints as background noise rather than personal burdens. Be honest. If the relationship is close and you feel comfortable, have an honest conversation about how their behavior affects you. For example, you might say, "I care about you, but I've noticed that our conversations often focus on what's going wrong and it's starting to weigh on me. Can we try to balance things out with more positive topics?" If the chronic complainer refuses to change and their behavior continues to harm your mental health, it may be necessary to distance yourself entirely. This doesn't mean you have to be cruel. Just prioritize your well-being by fading out of the relationship or, in extreme cases, ending it directly. By recognizing the chronic complainer and taking steps to protect yourself, you can maintain a healthier, more positive outlook on life. 2. The manipulator. Characteristics of the manipulator. The manipulator is someone who uses deceit, coercion, or emotional tactics to control others for their own benefit. Unlike the chronic complainer who may not intend harm, the manipulator's actions are often deliberate and self-serving. They are skilled at reading people and exploiting their vulnerabilities, whether through guilt-tripping, flattery, gaslighting, or playing the victim. Manipulators are often charming and charismatic, which makes it easy for them to gain trust before revealing their true intentions. Common tactics of the manipulator include guilt-tripping, making you feel responsible for their problems or emotions, e.g., "If you were a real friend, you'd do this for me." Gaslighting, denying reality or twisting facts to make you doubt your own perceptions, e.g., "That never happened. You're overreacting." Flattery, using excessive praise to lower your defenses, e.g., "You're the only one I can trust with this." Playing the victim, portraying themselves as helpless or wrong to garner sympathy and avoid accountability, e.g., "Everyone's always against me. Why can't you just help me this once?" Silent treatment, withholding communication or affection to punish you or force compliance. Manipulators are often motivated by a desire for power, control, or personal gain, and they may lack genuine empathy for others. In extreme cases, their behavior can be indicative of narcissistic personality disorder or other psychological conditions, though not all manipulators have a diagnosable disorder. Impact on your life. The manipulator can have a devastating impact on your mental and emotional health. Being in a relationship with a manipulator, whether romantic, professional, or platonic, can erode your self-esteem, leaving you feeling confused, anxious, and powerless. Over time, you may start to question your own judgment, as their gaslighting and guilt-tripping tactics distort your sense of reality. This can lead to a loss of confidence, difficulty making decisions, and even symptoms of anxiety or depression. In professional settings, a manipulator can undermine your career by taking credit for your work, spreading rumors, or sabotaging your efforts to advance. In personal relationships, they can create a dynamic of codependency where you feel obligated to meet their needs at the expense of your own. For example, a romantic partner who is a manipulator might guilt-trip you into staying in the relationship by saying, "No one else will ever love you like I do," even if the relationship is unhealthy or abusive. Real-life example, consider James, a young professional who works with a colleague named Lisa, a skilled manipulator. Lisa often compliments James, saying things like, "You're so much better at this than I am. Can you help me with my project?" Initially, James feels flattered and agrees to help, but over time he realizes that Lisa is taking credit for his work during team meetings. When James confronts her, Lisa gaslights him, saying, "I never said I'd give you credit. You must have misunderstood." She also plays the victim, claiming, "I'm under so much stress, and now you're attacking me." Confused and guilt-ridden, James continues to help her, but his own performance suffers, and he starts to doubt his abilities. Eventually, James recognizes Lisa's manipulative tactics and begins setting boundaries, refusing to assist her unless it's mutually beneficial and documented. Psychological insights. Psychologically, manipulators often exhibit traits associated with the dark triad of personality: narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. Narcissism drives their need for admiration and control. Machiavellianism fuels their strategic and deceitful approach to relationships, and psychopathy contributes to their lack of empathy or remorse. However, not all manipulators are clinical narcissists or psychopaths. Some may have learned manipulative behaviors as a survival mechanism, perhaps due to past trauma or insecure attachment styles. Regardless of the cause, their behavior is harmful, and understanding their motivations does not mean you should tolerate it. Manipulators are particularly dangerous because they exploit human tendencies toward trust and empathy. For example, research on social psychology shows that people are naturally inclined to reciprocate favors, the principle of reciprocity, which manipulators use to their advantage by creating a sense of obligation. They also prey on people pleasers or those with low self-esteem, as these individuals are more likely to comply with their demands. Strategies for avoidance dealing with a manipulator requires vigilance, assertiveness, and a strong sense of self. Here are some strategies to protect yourself. Recognize the signs. Educate yourself about manipulative tactics so you can spot them early. Keep a journal of interactions if necessary, as this can help you identify patterns and counteract gaslighting. Set firm boundaries. Be clear about what you will and won't tolerate. For example, if a manipulator tries to guilt trip you, respond with, "I'm sorry you feel that way, but I'm not able to help with this." Don't engage emotionally. Manipulators thrive on emotional reactions, so stay calm and factual in your interactions. Avoid getting drawn into arguments or defending yourself excessively. Seek validation from trusted sources. If a manipulator is making you doubt your reality, confide in a trusted friend, family member, or therapist to get an outside perspective. Cut ties. If the manipulator's behavior is severely impacting your well-being and they show no willingness to change, consider ending the relationship. This may be difficult, especially if they are a family member or coworker, but your mental health is worth it. In professional settings, document interactions and escalate concerns to HR if needed. By recognizing and distancing yourself from the manipulator, you can reclaim your autonomy and protect your emotional well-being. 3. The energy vampire. Characteristics of the energy vampire. The energy vampire is someone who drains your emotional, mental, or physical energy, leaving you feeling exhausted, overwhelmed, or depleted after interactions. Unlike the chronic complainer who focuses on negativity or the manipulator who seeks control, the energy vampire's primary impact is on your energy levels. They may not always have malicious intent, but their behavior consistently leaves you feeling worse than before you interacted with them. Energy vampires come in many forms, but common characteristics include neediness, constantly demanding your attention, time, or emotional support without reciprocating. Drama-prone, creating or thriving on chaos, conflict, or crises, often pulling you into their problems. Over-talking, dominating conversations with their own issues, rarely showing interest in your life. Emotional dumping, using you as a sounding board for their problems without regard for your capacity to listen. Clinginess, overstepping boundaries by expecting you to be available at all times. Energy vampires may not always be aware of their impact, as their behavior can stem from insecurity, loneliness, or a lack of emotional regulation. However, intentional or not, their presence can be toxic if left unchecked. Impact on your life. Spending time with an energy vampire can leave you feeling physically and emotionally drained, making it harder to focus on your own goals, relationships, and self-care. Over time, this energy depletion can lead to burnout, resentment, and even physical symptoms like fatigue, headaches, or insomnia. If you are an empathetic or highly sensitive person, you may be particularly vulnerable to energy vampires, as you may feel compelled to help them even at your own expense. In professional settings, an energy vampire can disrupt productivity by monopolizing your time or creating unnecessary drama. For example, a coworker who constantly interrupts your work to vent about personal problems can derail your focus and increase your stress levels. In personal relationships, an energy vampire can strain friendships or romantic partnerships by creating an imbalanced dynamic where your needs are consistently overlooked. Real-life example, consider Emily, a graphic designer who has a friend named Rachel, an energy vampire. Rachel frequently calls Emily late at night, unloading her latest drama, whether it's a fight with her boyfriend, a work crisis, or a family issue. These calls often last hours, with Rachel barely pausing to ask about Emily's life. Initially, Emily feels obligated to listen, thinking it's what good friends do, but over time, she notices that she feels exhausted and irritable after their conversations. She also starts neglecting her own needs, like sleep and exercise, to accommodate Rachel's demands. Eventually, Emily realizes that Rachel's behavior is unsustainable and begins setting boundaries, such as limiting calls to once a week and keeping them under 30 minutes. Psychological insights from a psychological perspective. Energy vampires often exhibit traits of emotional dependency or poor emotional regulation. They may rely on others to validate their feelings or solve their problems rather than developing internal coping mechanisms. This behavior can be linked to attachment theory, particularly anxious attachment styles, where individuals fear abandonment and seek constant reassurance from others. In some cases, energy vampires may also struggle with low self-esteem, using attention-seeking behaviors to feel valued or important. For those on the receiving end, the impact of an energy vampire can be understood through the lens of emotional labor, the effort required to manage one's own emotions and support others. Constantly performing emotional labor for an energy vampire can lead to compassion fatigue, a state of emotional exhaustion often seen in caregivers or helping professionals. Strategies for avoidance. Protecting yourself from an energy vampire requires setting boundaries and prioritizing your own energy. Here are some strategies. Identify your limits. Reflect on how much time and energy you can realistically give without feeling drained. Use this as a guide for setting boundaries. Set time limits. If an energy vampire demands your attention, set clear time limits for interactions. For example, you might say, I have 15 minutes to chat, but then I need to get back to work. Practice assertiveness. Be direct about your needs and boundaries. For instance, if they interrupt your work, say, I'm in the middle of something right now. Can we discuss this later? Redirect the focus. Encourage the energy vampire to take responsibility for their problems by asking questions like, what do you think you'll do about this? Or have you considered talking to a professional about this? Recharge your energy. After interacting with an energy vampire, take time to recharge through activities that restore your energy, such as exercise, meditation, or spending time with positive people. Cut ties if necessary. If the energy vampire consistently disrespects your boundaries and drains your energy, consider reducing or ending contact. This may be challenging, especially if they are a close friend or family member, but your well-being must come first. By managing your interactions with energy vampires, you can preserve your energy and maintain a healthier balance in your life. 4. The unreliable flake. Characteristics of the unreliable flake. The unreliable flake is someone who consistently fails to follow through on commitments, leaving you feeling disappointed, frustrated, or let down. This type of person may make grand promises or plans but rarely delivers, often canceling at the last minute, showing up late, or simply disappearing without explanation. While occasional flakiness is understandable, life can be unpredictable. The unreliable flake makes unreliability a pattern, showing a lack of respect for your time, energy, and trust. Common behaviors of the unreliable flake include last-minute cancellations, frequently backing out of plans with little notice or flimsy excuses, chronic lateness, arriving late to meetings, events, or appointments without apology or effort to improve. Broken promises, promising to help, deliver, or show up, but failing to follow through. Ghosting, disappearing from communication, especially when you're relying on them. Excuses galore, offering endless justifications for their behavior, often blaming external circumstances rather than taking responsibility. Unreliable flakes may not always intend harm, as their behavior can stem from poor time management, fear of confrontation, or an inability to say no. However, intentional or not, their actions can have serious consequences for your trust and well-being. Impact on your life. The unreliable flake can create significant stress and disruption in your life, particularly if you depend on them for important tasks or emotional support. In professional settings, an unreliable flake can jeopardize projects, miss deadlines, or leave you to pick up the slack. damaging your reputation or increasing your workload. In personal relationships, their behavior can erode trust, leaving you feeling undervalued or taken for granted. Over time, you may find yourself hesitating to make plans or rely on others, as the unreliable flake's actions condition you to expect disappointment. The emotional toll of dealing with an unreliable flake can also be significant. Constantly being let down can lead to feelings of frustration, anger, or self-doubt, especially if you start questioning whether you're asking too much or expecting too little. In extreme cases, the unreliable flake's behavior can trigger abandonment issues, particularly if you have a history of unreliable relationships in your past. Real-life example: consider Mike, a small business owner who hires a freelance web designer named Chloe, an unreliable flake. Chloe promises to deliver a new website for Mike's business within a month, but as the deadline approaches, she stops responding to emails and misses scheduled check-ins. When Mike finally reaches her, Chloe offers excuses, family emergencies, technical issues, and other vague reasons, without providing a clear timeline for completion. Frustrated, Mike ends up hiring another designer, losing time and money in the process. Reflecting on the experience, Mike realizes that Chloe's pattern of flakiness was evident from the start, as she was late to their initial meeting and vague about her availability. In the future, Mike decides to vet freelancers more carefully, looking for signs of reliability and professionalism. Psychological insights. Psychologically, the unreliable flakes' behavior can often be traced to issues like poor executive functioning, fear of failure, or conflict avoidance. For example, individuals with weak time management skills or difficulty prioritizing tasks may struggle to meet commitments even if they have good intentions. Others may overcommit out of a desire to please people, only to back out when they feel overwhelmed. In some cases, flakiness can be a symptom of deeper psychological issues, such as anxiety, depression, or attention deficit disorders, though this does not excuse the behavior or its impact on others. From the perspective of those affected, dealing with an unreliable flake can trigger a psychological phenomenon known as learned helplessness, where repeated disappointments lead to a sense of powerlessness or resignation. This can make it harder to set boundaries or hold others accountable, perpetuating a cycle of frustration. Strategies for avoidance. Protecting yourself from an unreliable flake requires clear communication, realistic expectations, and a willingness to walk away. Here are some strategies. Screen for reliability. Before relying on someone, look for signs of consistency and responsibility. For example, in professional settings, check references or reviews. In personal relationships, observe how they treat others' time and commitments. Set clear expectations. When making plans or delegating tasks, be explicit about deadlines, responsibilities, and consequences. For instance, say, "I need this done by Friday at 5 p.m. If that's not possible, let me know now so I can make other arrangements." Don't overinvest. Avoid putting all your trust or resources into an unreliable flake, especially early on. For example, if you're planning an event, have a backup plan in case they cancel. Hold them accountable. If they fail to follow through, address the issue directly and calmly. For example, say, "I was disappointed when you canceled our meeting last minute. It made it harder for me to stay on track. How can we ensure this doesn't happen again?" Cut ties. If the unreliable flake consistently lets you down and shows no effort to change, consider distancing yourself. This may mean ending a friendship, firing an employee, or finding a new collaborator. Remember that your time and energy are valuable, and you deserve relationships built on mutual respect. By recognizing and managing the unreliable flake, you can protect your time, reduce stress, and build stronger, more dependable relationships. 5. The arrogant know-it-all. Characteristics of the arrogant know-it-all. The arrogant know-it-all is someone who believes they are superior in knowledge, skill, or judgment, and dismisses others' perspectives, ideas, or contributions. This type of person often dominates conversations, corrects others excessively, and refuses to admit when they are wrong. They may use their perceived expertise to belittle or intimidate, creating an environment where others feel undervalued or silenced. While confidence and expertise are valuable traits, the arrogant know-it-all takes these to an extreme, prioritizing their ego over collaboration or mutual respect. Common behaviors of the arrogant know-it-all include condescension, speaking to others as if they are inferior. Even understand this, but let me explain it simply. Overcorrecting, nitpicking or correcting others even on trivial matters to assert dominance. Dismissiveness, ignoring or belittling others' ideas, e.g., that's a terrible idea, here's what we should do instead. Inflexibility, refusing to consider alternative viewpoints or admit mistakes, e.g., I'm never wrong about this. Self-aggrandizement, constantly highlighting their own achievements, knowledge, or credentials, often exaggerating their expertise. Arrogant know-it-alls may not always intend harm, as their behavior can stem from insecurity, a need for validation, or a genuine belief in their superiority. However, intentional or not, their actions can create toxic dynamics in both personal and professional relationships. Impact on your life. The arrogant know-it-all can undermine your confidence, stifle your creativity, and create a power imbalance in relationships. In professional settings, their behavior can hinder collaboration, as they may dismiss team input, take credit for others' ideas, or create a hostile work environment. For example, imagine working with a colleague who constantly interrupts meetings to correct your ideas, even when they're not the expert on the topic. Over time, this can lead to frustration, disengagement, or even self-doubt, as you may start questioning your own abilities. In personal relationships, the arrogant know-it-all can strain friendships, romantic partnerships, or family dynamics by making you feel unheard or undervalued. For instance, a friend who always insists they know better, whether it's about parenting, career choices, or even trivial matters like movie trivia, can make conversations feel one-sided and exhausting. Over time, this dynamic can erode trust and mutual respect, leaving you feeling like your voice doesn't matter. Real-life example, consider Priya, a software engineer who works with a colleague named David, an arrogant know-it-all. During team meetings, David frequently interrupts Priya to correct her technical suggestions, even though Priya has more experience in the specific area they're discussing. He often says things like, "That's not how it works. Let me explain it to you," in a condescending tone. Initially, Priya tries to brush it off, but over time she notices that her confidence is waning, and she hesitates to share ideas in meetings. Eventually, Priya decides to address the issue by calmly asserting her expertise and setting boundaries, saying, "David, I appreciate your input, but I'd like to finish presenting my idea before we discuss alternatives." She also seeks support from her manager to ensure a more collaborative team dynamic. Psychological insights. Psychologically, the arrogant know-it-all's behavior is often rooted in insecurity or a fragile ego, despite their outward confidence. This phenomenon is known as the Dunning-Kruger effect, where individuals with limited knowledge or competence in a field overestimate their abilities while dismissing others' expertise. For some, arrogance is a defense mechanism to mask feelings of inadequacy or fear of being exposed as less knowledgeable than they claim. In extreme cases, this behavior can be linked to narcissistic personality traits, where the need for admiration and superiority drives their interactions. For those on the receiving end, the arrogant know-it-all's behavior can trigger imposter syndrome, a psychological pattern where individuals doubt their accomplishments and fear being exposed as a fraud. This is particularly common in high-achieving individuals who are already prone to self-doubt, as the arrogant know-it-all's dismissiveness can amplify these feelings. Strategies for avoidance. Dealing with an arrogant know-it-all requires confidence, assertiveness, and a focus on maintaining your own sense of worth. Here are some strategies. Don't take it personally. Remind yourself that their behavior is a reflection of their insecurities, not your abilities. Focus on your own strengths and achievements to counteract their dismissiveness. Set boundaries. Politely but firmly assert your right to be heard. For example, say, "I value your perspective, but I'd like to share my thoughts without interruption." Choose your battles. Not every correction or condescending remark needs a response. Decide when it's worth engaging and when it's better to let their behavior slide, especially in trivial matters. Seek allies. In professional settings, build alliances with colleagues or mentors who can support your ideas and counter the arrogant know-it-all's dominance. In personal relationships, confide in trusted friends or family members to validate your experiences. If the arrogant know-it-all's behavior is consistently harmful and they show no willingness to change, consider distancing yourself. This may mean limiting interactions, leaving a toxic workplace, or ending a friendship. Remember that you deserve relationships where your voice is valued and respected. By managing your interactions with the arrogant know-it-all, you can protect your confidence and maintain a healthier, more balanced dynamic in your relationships. Conclusion: prioritizing your well-being. Avoiding certain types of people is not about being judgmental or unkind, but about recognizing the impact that relationships have on your mental, emotional, and physical health. The chronic complainer, the manipulator, the energy vampire, the unreliable flake, and the arrogant know-it-all each bring unique challenges that can drain your energy, undermine your confidence, and derail your goals. While it's important to approach relationships with empathy and understanding, it's equally important to set boundaries and prioritize your well-being. Recognizing these toxic behaviors is the first step toward protecting yourself. From there, you can use strategies like setting boundaries, reframing conversations, seeking support, and if necessary, cutting ties to create a life surrounded by people who uplift, respect, and inspire you. Remember that you have the power to choose who you allow into your inner circle, and by doing so, you can cultivate a life that aligns with your values, goals, and happiness.